Views and opinions expressed in this production are those of the individual and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Shooters Nation or our sponsors. Information provided on this show is not a replacement for legal counsel or professional training. Listener and viewer discretion is advised. This is especially true on live shows.
Welcome to the Shooters Nation podcast, the show created for you, the armed citizen. Join our hosts and subject matter experts as we talk about guns and gear, practical training and knowledge, Second Amendment issues, and the firearms culture. Be sure to join us after the show at shootersnation.com and become part of the Shooters Nation.
Hey folks, welcome to the Shooters Nation podcast. I'm your host, David Yancey, coming to you from our studio just outside of Nashville, Tennessee, and co-hosting with me via the magic of the internet is, of course, Mark Lancaster of Squared Away Customs. Good evening, Mark.
Good evening, David. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. So, also by the magic of technology, I'm pretty ramped up because we've already had the conversation that the audience is about to listen to.
Yes, we have.
Yeah. I mean, We've been, first of all, high five to ourselves. We've really kind of kept this quiet for almost 2 months, right?
It's been a minute. Yeah,
it's been a minute.
For a minute. Yeah.
And that was really hard to do. I never want to advertise something, that far in advance because so many things can happen to fall through. Sure. Schedules get bumped and it makes it difficult. So, but wow, I can't wait to let the folks listen to this one. I think it's a good one. It's a really good one.
Yep.
Well, it's interesting. We sailed through the last episode and I did not even think about it. And I don't know that you did either. We passed our 1 year mark. We, last month was our last episode would have been our 1 year episode. So, it sounds weird to say happy anniversary, Mark, but it's
it was a quick year.
It was a quick year. Yeah. And I think this year's going to, the pace things are moving right now, it's going to pass by even quicker. And that's even with us trying to slow things down for the sake of quality and doing an episode every other week. So, we've had good feedback on that. We've also had some folks that have, posted the meme of the skeleton laying on the bus bench and it said waiting for another episode of Shooters Nation podcast. And they kind of cracked me up. I was like, man, I feel bad. But at the same time, I feel like we're investing in the quality of the show. So
absolutely.
Yeah, it's good.
I want to stick to giving a really good conversation and really good data and stuff like that. And I just don't, I think you said watered down, just having a podcast because we have to have a podcast rather than podcast because we have good content.
Right. So, no, I totally agree with you. And it makes me more willing to have longer episodes when we have good content. So, it's less likely to put the brakes on just to hit a time on the clock. Right. Speaking of time on the clock, I want to be respectful of our audience's time, and we'll get straight into some business here before we get going. I want to remind you all that you can connect with us after the show at shootersnation.com, and that's where you can send us feedback, submit ideas for future shows, sign up for News Blast mailing lists, and join the Shooters Nation community. And so really looking more and more at how we can move the community space into a reward for our Patreon patrons. And I think you'll start seeing some changes there as we move forward in 2019. But definitely, with that in mind, head over to patreon.com/shootersnation if you care to support the show and help make future episodes possible. There are certain aspects of our Patreon presence that are completely free to folks. And speaking of free, if that's you and you like the word free, you can help us out at no cost to yourself by leaving us a positive review on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, YouTube, etc. While you're doing the social media swing, check us out on Instagram as @ShootersNationRadio and on Facebook.com/ShootersNation. All right. With all that out of the way, we can get to the good stuff. Mark, tonight the listeners are in for a treat. We've got two gentlemen who we've been very excited about getting on the show. From shootingclasses.com, which is an online portal that assists firearms trainers and ranges in administering and automating their business, we have Bill Orndorf and Dave Boon Benton.
Yes, sir.
Man, I got that out. I'm still, man, I'm amped up. I'm kind of teetering on the edge of my seat here. Bill is one of the founding partners of shootingclasses.com. He's a former deputy sheriff with the Brevard County, Florida Sheriff's Office, where he worked both patrol and in the criminal investigation division. He's an NRA certified firearms instructor and a member of the Defensive Marksmanship Instructor Group, DMIG. That alone makes Bill a subject matter expert. We could have totally had an episode with Bill by himself and would welcome that anytime he wants to do it.
For sure.
For sure, right? Now, let's move on to the other gentleman. Boon likely needs no introduction to a lot of our listeners. He's a U.S. Marine Corps veteran. He has a combined 24 years of serving in specialized teams and leadership roles in the military, law enforcement, protective security, and the intelligence community. There's a hint for you. He has held many positions on various teams, from assaulter, sniper, breacher, tactical medic, team leader, and instructor. But the reason why most folks will recognize that name, even if they're just sitting here right now going, Boon Benton, why do I know that name? He is one of the warriors that fought to protect the U.S. diplomatic post and CIA annex in Benghazi, Libya in September of 2012. The commitment and bravery of Boon and his brothers in arms was chronicled in the book 13 Hours, the inside account of what really happened in Benghazi, and also the movie 13 Hours, The Secret Soldiers of Benghazi. Folks, if you're here to hear what Mr. Benton has to say about fighting in and around a vehicle, then I think you're in for a fantastic show. We enjoyed the conversation, and we're proud to bring this to you. So without any further ado, we'll let you get on over to it. Hey, folks, thanks for joining us for the interview. So for your sake as the audience, we want to begin by saying that the focus of this conversation is vehicular close quarters battle, primarily for the armed citizen and the law enforcement officer. There's an undeniably strong attraction towards talking about Benghazi, but the only way that we're going to be doing that in this conversation is to draw from lessons that Mr. Benton learned in that environment and that event in particular to fuel this key conversation. So much about that tragic event in September of 2012 has already been covered elsewhere, and we want to make wise use of our time with these gentlemen today by asking uncommon questions and by coming at that scenario from a different angle to the extent that we do at all. So, gentlemen, does that sound acceptable to you as we begin to talk?
Absolutely.
Great.
Absolutely.
Great. So, Boon, thank you for joining us. It's a pleasure to speak with you. Bill, likewise, pleasure to speak with you again.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely our pleasure. Mark, glad you could join me for this. I know that you and I were both very much looking forward to this tonight.
Every time.
Every time. Yeah. Yep. All right. So let's just get right into this. Let's talk about vehicular CQB, close quarters battle. How would you gentlemen define that term for someone who's never had any exposure to it?
Boone, I'm going to defer to you because I know what you're going to do with this. So,
okay.
Wow.
Generally, I don't like to use the term vehicle CQB.
Okay.
Just because CQB is a complete system, and to refer to one engagement in a vehicle wouldn't paint the complete picture, if that makes sense.
It does.
We can continue to use the term vehicle CQB for the rest of the show.
Okay.
If you guys are good with that.
We are. I think that it's good to define what you think of in that phrase, and then if you think that we should substitute a different term, let's go ahead and do that.
Okay. I know it's a term that's used a lot in the standard, but if we use vehicle CQB and looking at CQB as a system, then we would also have to include like vehicle assaults, for the complete system. And now we get into sedans, buses, linear assaults. So it's a broader picture when we talk about CQB.
Okay.
I think what we're really referring to is vehicle defense or close range engagement inside of a vehicle. And I think that's more applicable to the legally armed civilian. If that makes sense.
How would that translate? Does that still apply for law enforcement? And when I'm thinking about that, we'll get into this here in a minute with another point, but also for the law enforcement officer that is either fighting from within his vehicle or he's initiated a traffic stop, and you've seen these videos a lot lately on social media, at least Mark and I have. The officer walks to the car, begins to do the normal procedure of questioning the suspect, and then suddenly the suspect produces a firearm and starts shooting at the officer. Is that kind of in the same ballpark here, or is that a different thing entirely?
In my personal opinion, I think it's the exact same ballpark.
Okay.
A lot of the scenarios that a law enforcement officer will find himself in are some of the same scenarios that a legally armed civilian would also find themselves in.
Fascinating. Okay. Bill, how about you? I mean, does the term vehicle CQB or VCQB, does that kind of, evoke the same thoughts and definition when you begin to consider it, or?
I kind of think of it along the same lines as Boone. I mean, when I talk about vehicle CQB, to me, it's kind of like realistically is vehicle defense in and around a vehicle, whether you're in a parking lot, whether you're on a traffic stop. But to me, it's vehicle defense in and around the vehicle.
Gotcha. Perfect. Well, so some of our listeners might be struggling with how this is applicable to them at all as a regular citizen. What could you guys offer that might open their minds to that idea? Bill, why don't we start with you, and then we'll go to Boone.
Okay. Well, I can see that, where do we go? We do go to two places all the time. So we're in our house or we're in the vehicle all the time. So, how is that applicable? Every day you're in your car. Every day there's a chance of something happening, whether that at a stop sign or a red light or wherever you are, or you pull into a parking lot, into Walmart. Those things are all very applicable. I always like to say that, number one, if you're going to get a gunfight, don't show up. But I can't tell you how many people show up when they pull into a Walmart parking lot. They see, somebody who's backed into a spot in the back, the car's running, the door's partially cracked, but they pull in anyhow. And they pull in anyhow, and they're showing up to a potential gunfight. Does it mean it's going to happen? No, but it's a target indicator that says, these things can be avoided by just driving to a different part of the lot. So, using that vehicle to be smart about, hey, do I want to be in this situation? To me, is the first part of all that.
Yeah, for sure. I think we, especially civilians that haven't been exposed to violence, and we live in our polite, peaceful little cocoons, we tend to ignore that inner voice that says, hey, something's wrong about this setting. The car that you just described sitting in the back of the lot idling with its parking lights on. What are they up to, right? And how many people?
Kind of strange because the door's open, it's partially cracked, and I've seen it a lot.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how many people will pull right next to that car and never think twice about it.
Yeah.
And, they jump out or they unlock their doors, and somebody could obviously bail in the passenger seat. And you've got an issue, but why show up to a potential gunfight if you don't have to be?
Agree. Ben, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think I have to agree with Bill on that. To really put in perspective for the audience, just like Bill said, I mean, we spend the majority of our time either in our house and or in our vehicle. There's probably two vehicles for every human being in the United States. So the chances of you being in some type of situation are pretty high that you're going to be in your vehicle or around your vehicle when it happens.
Are the students that come to your classes to study up on this and get some training, to hopefully prepare them for that worst day of their life, do they come with a bit of an awareness? They've already been enlightened that, hey, I need to take this, or are they coming more from a curiosity perspective or to fill in a perceived gap in their training?
I think it's a lot of a little bit of everything. It really depends on the student.
Gotcha.
Some students are a little more aware. Others aren't. They have no idea, and that's why they're coming to the class. And then there's a few who kind of have an idea, but they're not sure. So you kind of get like a variety.
Gotcha.
Do you think there's any prerequisites that are important before somebody takes this sort of a vehicle class with a firearm?
I do, depending on at what level you're teaching. There are certain prereqs for safety, and there's certain prereqs for weapons manipulations. But I don't think that there are prereqs as far as like basic, intermediate, and advanced when it comes to the basic tactics of working in the vehicle or around the vehicle. I think it's more a basic level of, is this person safe? Can they keep up with the training?
Gotcha. Yeah. So I did a little bit of reading, and just in Memphis, Tennessee alone, which is, the other end of the state from where I'm at, statistics were showing that in 2016, there were 195 cases of carjackings reported. And in 2018, just 2 years later, the number went up to 329 cases reporting. And to add a little bit of color to that, I did some searching, and the U.S. Bureau of Justice statistics showed that in general, a weapon is used in over 70% of carjackings. Gentlemen, I honestly thought that number would be higher, and maybe, in 2019 it is, but, so what they're saying is 70% of the time, a person is going to produce a weapon of some sort to get you out of your vehicle. And, frankly, I thought, who would get out of their car without the threat of some sort of violence, right?
I would bet there would probably be a higher statistic if you took the perceived threat of a weapon
and
added in there. Because it does, raise it from a, a third-degree felony, depending upon the state, to maybe a second-degree felony with a weapon, but an implied use of it is a lesser charge. So
interesting. Yeah,
that would be my guess. Because like you said, I think it's a very valid point. When I get out of the car, if somebody jumped into the car and said, "Hey, I'm going to punch you in the eye," no,
right,
we're going to be duking it out in the car. It is what it is. But I totally agree with you.
What was interesting also was I found that the reason that carjackings, this is a theory from, the people that theorize on this kind of stuff. They said that the reason that carjackings are going up in popularity is because the safety and security mechanisms that are present in most cars, a transponder key has to be present in the vehicle, or, the key has to have a chip and it's in the ignition switch. It's made it difficult to steal a car, just by breaking into it at night and hot wiring it. In order to get the car now, you have to take it from the person that has that key, and
right, which can even be a credit card in your wallet at this point with an RFID chip.
Yeah,
right.
Can be the key to your vehicle. So absolutely, that makes perfect sense.
Well, I kind of teach this in a situational awareness class I'll do from time to time. Is when people come out of the Walmart, for example, they'll have their key fob in their hand and they can't find the car.
Yeah.
So what do? They start clicking this sucker from 200 yards away until they have told everybody and their brother where their car is and it's open and it's in the back of the lot. And what have you done? You have just sent out a big bat signal that said, "Hey,
right.
By the way, Rob here.
Right.
So meet me over here because I'm coming." And then you can feel free to jump in my car and take it. So those are to me, those are huge target indicators that I just don't think people are aware of what they're doing.
Right. I hadn't even thought about that before now, but you're exactly right. There's a big what not to do as you're walking through the parking lot. Don't just keep.
How many people do you see do it? They do it all. They keep
constantly.
Clicking. Ding, 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 ding.
Yeah. Very
so.
Bill, Boone, it sounded like you were about to say something there.
Oh no, I was laughing.
Okay. Yeah.
Sorry.
No, laugh away. I'm laughing too. That's yeah. It is. It's like a transponder. Here's my car, and I'm not to it yet. Feel free to open the door and climb right on in.
Just go wait for me because I'll be there in a minute, and it's open. So get ready.
Right.
Go hide. Just do what you need to do because you've got some time. Because I'm walking from 100 feet away.
Right. Oh, me. I wonder how many people are listening to this podcast right now, thinking, "Oh my God, I do that." I need to stop. Oh, that's funny. I think I've done it before too, and I don't know. That's bad. All right.
Well, if you think about it, it's the perfect situation for a carjacking is that you literally have told everybody and their brother, "I'm going to be here, right here, and it's open." So come over, set up, get some time, get some tea, load your weapons, get your mat, you'll be good. Meet me here.
We that reminds me of a show that we did last year. We had a I'm going to use the word former, and I do that at my own peril. Because he knows who I am and he knows where to find me. But we had a former Navy SEAL that is head of security for a local church and private school. And, one of the things that came out in that episode was that the reason why church attacks are so common now is because people know where to find you 1 or 2 days a week. They know what time you'll be there, what time you'll arrive, what time you'll leave. And if they know your car, they know what to find there too, right? So we're doing the same thing with our key on our for our car, hitting the button to unlock, and it blinks and flashes and sounds the horn and all that other stuff. We've told them exactly where to find us. And
sure, your time and place predictable.
Yeah, that's nuts. That's not a sound tactic. It doesn't sound like. So.
I don't think it's worked for a lot of people, to be honest.
Unless you're luring them in, and then that's illegal. So you should.
And social media has made that more prevalent in people's lives too, because they're checking in and they're letting people know that they're going to be here and they're attending this event. Yeah. They're going to, so on and so forth. So social media has helped with the same sort of thing.
It's crazy. We overshare even when we don't think about it. Yeah. All right. Well, so Ben, we talked a moment ago about law enforcement officers and how relevant this is to them. When I thought about this preparing for the show, I thought, for a cop, it's even more relevant because, the recent attacks in the past 4 years on police officers, ambush attacks while they're sitting in their vehicles and things like that. They should know how to fight from within their car. Am I crazy, or how is this different for a police officer than a civilian, if at all?
This isn't different, and you're definitely not crazy, but it's a bigger problem than just being able to fight from the vehicle. Bill and I are both former law enforcement, so we're not bagging on the law enforcement guys. But the sad fact is that, one, they have no awareness whatsoever. Two, they have no mental readiness to even deal with the problem before we can start talking about tactics.
I've got several friends that are law enforcement, city and county here in Tennessee, and I know from speaking with them, I'll get a phone call from them or a text during the day, and we start chit-chatting. It's like, what are you doing? I'm sitting in a parking lot, I'm doing paperwork. And I immediately think, well, you're sitting in a parking lot doing paperwork on a phone talking to me. How aware can you possibly be of what's going on around you, right? And not bagging on them, but let's be honest. When I'm multitasking like that, I'm not doing anything well. I'm doing all those things poorly.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, the patrol vehicle is the mobile office now. So there are times where you do have to do some type of administrative work inside of your car. But if you are going to do that, you need to strategically, one, place the vehicle to where you have good observation. Two, type a couple words, pause, take a minute, do a 360, see what's in your environment before you get sucked back into that computer screen.
Very true. Very true. So, thinking about the law enforcement officer, again, sitting in their vehicle, possibility for ambush being one of those things. But also, social media, it seems like for the past year, I've been more aware of these videos popping up where body cams are becoming very popular with agencies. And officer walks up to a vehicle having done a traffic stop, and after just a little bit of small talk, the suspect in the vehicle opens fire on that law enforcement officer. A policeman that comes to, or a policewoman that comes to class with you guys with the vehicle as the center point of that training. Obviously, I would think they're going to learn about that too. They're, what do you teach them? What do you show them to be ready for that sort of thing?
Well, they're definitely going to learn proximity and spatial awareness, but they're also going to learn the advantage or disadvantage of being in a vehicle or out of a vehicle, how to use the angles of the vehicle, how to maximize their cover working around the vehicle as well. And then we also do what we call a ballistic lab, where they get to see with their duty weapon and their duty ammo what their round will really do through the windshield or through other parts of the vehicle. So they understand what's cover, what's not cover.
Do you teach any like hand to hand, or is it always gun or weapon?
Absolutely. We definitely teach in-flight weapon access hand to hand. Normally things start, without a weapon in hand. And sometimes it might not be a good idea to access that weapon. It might just make it worse. So you might need to fight to a dominant position to where you can even access any weapon, let alone a firearm.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Get it out and put it safe rounds on target. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
So I think it was Craig Douglas that says that, fighting in a vehicle, a gunfight in a vehicle is like a combination of rock climbing and jujitsu in a car. And I did a class with a previous guest, and man, that was something else. We went like heads on, hand to hand, ready, set, go type of thing. Like my goal is to get out my gun. Their goal was to stop me from doing it. And it was like everything, all rules go out the window. Like first to get hits wins type of thing. And man, that was a very, very eye-opening experience. I'm 6'6", 260 pounds. I'm a big dude, and this was happening in a Jeep Cherokee 4-door. And by the end of the class, we had destroyed the back seat. It was broken in half. The headliner was ripped down. The headrests were all gone. The car was completely destroyed from the inside out. But I mean, just for you listeners out there, like, you have no idea what you're getting into. Like, no idea what it's like to get into a life or death battle inside of a vehicle. And I really don't either, but I know what my training showed me. And that was even eye-opening. Now, imagine if it was real life on the line. I mean, just extremely, extremely crazy.
Absolutely. You mentioned Craig Douglas, and Craig Douglas's vehicle class is one of the top classes in the industry right now. And you're absolutely right. He makes that class as close as it can possibly be to real life without actually being shot or, assaulted.
Yeah, I mean, another. Yeah, I can't stress enough. It was very eye opening. It seemed very real. Like, at that moment when we were and we had foam knives, right? But in that moment, like, you didn't want that thing near you. It felt real. The tempo was up and it was hot. We were sweaty, and it was August in New Hampshire, and yeah, it was a hell of an experience.
So what you're describing, and obviously it's the quality of the instructor, is you being stress inoculated to things that legitimately could happen, and you were putting yourself in a position where you thought it was real.
100%.
We were talking a little bit about when David brought up, as far as, what police get into. A lot of time they never get that kind of stress inoculators. They don't know, so when it happens for the first time, it is legitimately those responses that you just had. They're surprised because, departments don't pay for the stress inoculation training. They don't want to go the second, third levels. They just teach basics. And as you saw from those classes, without that ability to understand the stress that comes into it, it just creates problem upon problem. And you really can't even think through it the first couple of times you do it.
Mm.
It's such a shame, too, because the media, the news recently, we had an officer, I want to say that it was either in Alabama or Louisiana, sitting in her squad car, shot by somebody that came right up to her and shot her. So there's some situational awareness involved in that too. But I'm not completely savvy on all the details. Was there ever a fight? Did she put up a fight? Did the fight look like what she thought it might have when she was preparing for that sort of thing in advance? And without the scenarios that you guys put people through to figure, think about this stuff proactively, you're operating at a stark disadvantage. What is the common saying that we don't rise to the occasion, we default to the level of our training, right? Sure. And that's it seems like a big deficiency. Are you guys seeing more law enforcement agencies putting their officers through this sort of thing, or does it just really depend on the quality of the agency or the officers, asking or self-funding for this kind of thing, or what's happening out there?
Well, I can say that, Boon and I were both up at 6-hour academy, at an instructor course, a red dot course, and there was, a lot of SWAT guys from around the country. I think the LAPD guys were there. Was it LAPD or Orange County Sheriff's Office out there? Yeah, they're putting them through all those kind of things, and those guys are, squared away. They're ready to go. But a lot of the other guys were paying out of their own pockets from the smaller departments, and they did it on their own. Without them and taking that initiative, they would have never got that training.
They just want to go home at the end of their shift, right? I mean,
which to me, I hate that, to be honest with you. I truly hate that statement, because if your whole job is to go home, you ought to stay home to start with.
Okay.
That's just how I feel about it. Right. I get kind of vocal about it because that's not your job. In my opinion, your job is to, like in Parkland, for example, sometimes your job's to die. I hate to say it, but it is what it is. Sure. It is. I'm not saying you want to die.
Right.
Your job is to go in and save those kids. And if you take one, you take one.
Oh, yeah.
That was your job.
Yeah.
So to go home, that's a bad mindset. I just want to go home. I just want to survive.
Yeah.
Surviving is, you're on a colostomy bag the rest of your life.
Right.
That's a bad deal.
That's not surviving, really. Right.
So the mentality is you want to win.
Right. Well, yeah, I guess
winning's different than surviving.
No, I appreciate you. I appreciate the correction, the recalibration there, because you're right. If you're going to go, I guess the object is to make it as hard on that other SOB as you possibly can.
Your job's to win. Yeah. For me, your job's to win. I get the way with the modern political environment that is not your job. And they, even 25 years ago, they're telling you your job is to go home.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there 25 years ago going, well, why would I even leave my job to go home? I should just stay here. I mean, It's just crazy. It creates a defensive mindset that you just want to live and not win.
I've got so many questions I want to ask about that, and I wonder: do the police departments are the chiefs, the admin, the brass, are they fostering that mindset for?
That's
definitely a Boon question.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
Yeah. To jump on what Bill's saying, I 100% agree with him. I think where that saying came from was to raise awareness for good tactics.
Yeah.
And it kind of got convoluted with, I'm going to do everything I can to get home and I don't need to risk. But there's a priority of life. And the priority of life for law enforcement is, one, the citizens you protect. They're number one. Number two are your fellow officers. Number three is your own life. Number four is the subject's life. And we kind of forget that in law enforcement.
Yeah.
And we use that term, well, I just need to get home at the end of the shift. And it stops a lot of cops from doing what they need to do. So I absolutely agree with Bill. If you just want to get home at the end of the shift, just stay home.
Well, that tells me even I need to gut check myself as an armed citizen. A father, a husband, supposed to be the protector of my family. If I'm protecting them, it should be all in. Even if that means I'm not going home, but I should endeavor that they do.
Absolutely. Now that doesn't mean that you take needless risks,
right?
But that's the mindset you need to have. Absolutely.
Mark, you
bring this up, and I know you probably don't want to go this rabbit hole where you get down to the OODA loop and all that.
We love tangents. Go ahead.
We're good on those.
The OODA loop, and what was the whole purpose of that? It was kind of try to create back. I think it was the Vietnam War. They put it together to try to have our fighter pilots react faster.
World War II.
Was it World War II?
Yes.
React faster and become more efficient in battle. And the whole idea is, what did they learn from that? They learned they needed to take it to the person that was bringing it to them, as opposed to being defensive. Because if they were defensive, you're always reacting to somebody else's first reaction.
Right.
So that's a 2-second OODA at 1.8 seconds to be able to react to whatever they do. We think about this. If I'm taking it to them, they've got to react to me.
Right.
So what do you do in an ambush? I mean, do you just sit there and take it, or do you assault forward? You assault forward to change the mindset of the people that are assaulting you. So why is that any different, like in a vehicle confrontation or anything else, or even in if I had kids in my house, I'm taking it to them. It's just the way it is. I want them to be able to react to me, and them being 2 seconds behind the curve, as opposed to me being a lead receptacle for the first 2 seconds.
Boon, I know we've agreed that we want to be very sensitive to this subject. All I know is what I've read, and maybe what I've seen on the
true. Absolutely.
Maybe what everything written about Boon is true.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So I know what I've read, and I know that what we've seen on the big screen, and obviously Hollywood takes their own liberties. What I read suggested that you guys in Benghazi had that mindset, which was, we're not going to sit here and be the recipients of this. We're going to take the fight back to them. Is that accurate?
That's 100% accurate. We definitely needed to seize the initiative, and that's exactly what we did. We kept that momentum going the entire night. Is
that one of the, and I've got a question that I don't know where in this conversation it's going to work itself in. It feels like it's kind of easing into it right now, but is that one of the tools that you guys had in your bag of tricks to sway the outcome in your favor? Was just that speed, violence of action, overwhelming opposition, and making the bad guy go on the defensive?
That was actually a huge part of it. But in order to be able to do that, we also had to have small unit leadership, which every single one of us had, combined with commander's intent and also an individual skill set that was at a very high level.
Yeah.
So it was a combination of things that allowed us to do that.
Wow. Okay.
Of course, with a few technological advantages that we won't get into.
Right. Sure.
How do you mentally and physically handle the exhaustion from an experience like that. Because I can't imagine, I've done 24-hour stretches without exerting a ton of physical energy, but like I can imagine. I mean, I don't know, just from what I read the book and I've seen the movie and I know the story. I know what was going on there, and it's just like it seemed like it was a very long stretch for everybody involved. And is there methods that you use to stay acute and focused and on point, or is it really a challenge constantly once you reach that certain plateau?
Well, it's kind of multiple answers for that. One, to get to that level, you're already used to being stressed and dealing with things like that. So it becomes a new normal, if you will, although there's nothing really normal about it. You just adapt to situations like that. But two, it goes back to the stress inoculation. When you train for those type of situations, and you're put in those type of environments, you tend to become very comfortable in that environment. So what may seem extremely stressful to one person, for us might not seem as stressful. So we're able to deal with it better mentally. Physically, you just have to be in shape. If you're not in shape physically, you're not going to get like a second wind, if you will. You're just going to suck.
That's it right there. That's the motivation I needed to keep forward this year. So that should be on a t-shirt, guys. You should just don't suck. That should, don't suck -Boon, right? So
I tell Bill that all the time.
Right?
Don't suck, Bill.
Don't suck. Right. Well, don't worry, I'll be printing the shirts up. I promise.
Right. Oh, me. All right, so I'm going to pull us back towards the subject at hand today, and I'm going to ask this. Boon, you made a comment a moment ago about angles, using angles in a vehicle, and I suspect that's something that a lot of people haven't thought of, and I had to really give pause as you said it to what it meant. Maybe elaborate on that, and I'll see if I'm even in the near vicinity of what you were kind of getting at.
Okay, so with angles play with cover and concealment and or deflection, and they also play with visual input. So you can create angles to see more and for them to see you less, and you can also create angles to maximize your cover. So just to give you an example, if I'm hiding behind the wheel well and I'm sucked into that vehicle, I have limited visibility, yet I have good cover. If that threat takes 10 steps to the right, and now they're looking at me, he maximized his angle. I'm no longer behind cover.
Yeah. I was also thinking, too, about the angles that a person seated in a vehicle with a seatbelt strapped across them has to work with. And it's really probably about 180 degrees, maybe a little bit more than that over their shoulders, but there's a limit to where you can get your weapon and be effective with it, right?
You had brought it up earlier about, on patrol and things like that, and you talk about angles. You think about if the driver is seatbelted in, and what are most of these police shootings that you see, and I'm certainly love cops, used to be one, got it, please don't take this negatively, but how many of them come up and stick their face inside the car? And they don't have to have that angle. It's only a 90-degree turn. If they just stayed behind the support system there that literally will stop a bullet, it wouldn't be very easy to turn around in that seat. It almost, I think a lot of times has prevented a ton of shootings by just better officer safety and creating the angle that makes them turn in a very awkward manner where they literally would have to come out of the car to be able to hit you.
Yeah. It's a very, very visible movement. It telegraphs exactly what their intent is when they begin to pivot in that seat, to go over their shoulder. Yeah. Gives the officer some very critical extra time to react. Mark, it looked like you had a thought there.
Yeah, you had mentioned that there was a couple different layers to the vehicle courses that you teach, and you said one of them was kind of like a shoot and see. I forget what you had called it, but was that? Can you say something like that where you'd shoot the car and then you'd go see what the bullet did?
Oh, the ballistics lab.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So I took a course about a year ago and spent a couple days shooting up a car. We shot it with a 9mm. We shot it with a guy that had 40. There's only one weird guy that had 40 for some reason. And then there was maybe a couple guys with 45, but so we shot it with kind of the gamut of pistol calibers, and then we shot it with a 5.56 and a 308. And basically what was instructed to us throughout that class is when you're shooting into or out of a vehicle, that you kind of, basically the line that kept on being used is predictably unpredictable.
Yes.
You find that as being a fair and solid statement?
I find that being a very fair statement. We do a lot of ballistic testing, both ballistic mediums and in ballistic gel. And what we find in the ballistic mediums, like shooting the vehicles, we can shoot a vehicle 10 times and we'll get 5 different results with the same ammo. It's very unpredictable. Now, having said that, there are things that you can do to get a more predictable result. But yeah, shooting vehicles is very unpredictable. And each vehicle is a separate test.
Because every pillar, every A-frame, every door support, every seat material, everything is different.
Absolutely.
It's crazy. That course was also the exact same course, and I think I mentioned it in this podcast before, where I learned a very, very big lesson about crowding cover. And I was shown how multiple misses in multiple different locations onto the side of the vehicle from the correct angle would have shot me directly in the face if I was crowding over the back tail light while the rounds were skipping down the side of the car.
Absolutely. And that's
very eye-opening demonstration.
Absolutely. That's what we call deflection. So when we teach cover and concealment, we always include deflection. Absolutely.
Ben, why don't you walk the listeners through the difference between cover and concealment? That was something that was very eye-opening to me the first time I saw it demonstrated.
Cover and concealment is very simple, actually. Cover is anything that will actually stop a bullet, and that's relative to the threat that's being used against you. Concealment is anything that will hide you from view, and it really is that simple. The hard part is seeing that in your natural environment and capitalizing on what truly is cover and what is concealment at the time.
How would you recommend using a vehicle to your advantage? And perhaps for this question, we'll take it from 2 different perspectives. One perspective is you're sitting in the vehicle. How could you use that vehicle to your advantage if somebody were to approach and try to attack you from outside of it?
If the vehicle is in good running condition and I have drivable terrain, best thing to do is just drive away.
Gotcha. Okay. That kind of feeds into the OODA loop, right? So now suddenly you're moving. They weren't expecting that, and now they have to adapt and try to put rounds on target.
Absolutely.
All right. So what if you're the law enforcement officer and you're approaching the vehicle that has a suspect and they're in it, you're out of it? How would you use the vehicle to your advantage if you were on the outside of it?
Like it's been mentioned before, just using the correct angles to maximize your cover and to maximize his observation. And then again, as you alluded to, watching his body language to cue you into any movements that might be hostile towards you.
For the law enforcement officer that's working in a team, he has a partner. How does that change any, if at all, when you have 2 officers approaching a vehicle, one from the passenger side and one from the driver's side? Is there anything in particular, different? And I'm not asking you guys to teach a, CQB class, on a podcast, but is there maybe just a nugget of knowledge that you could drop out there for the officers that maybe, they should check themselves and ask, am I doing this right?
Sure. I'll give you my quick opinion, then I'll let Bill respond to that as well, because he has a lot of time on patrol as well. But even as a single officer, the majority of the time, it's probably a better idea to actually come up on the passenger side. A lot of officers don't do that just for a lack of convenience for the most part. But as 2 officers, it allows you to cut more of the coverage of the vehicle to see inside of the vehicle. And if there is a threat, now instead of only having one eye, you have 2 eyes seeing those tails, gives you a lot more time to react to what's going on inside of the vehicle.
Bill, what do you think?
Well, I guess, I'm going to obviously agree with Boon. He's certainly a subject matter expert. You talk about predictability is, where does the bad guy think that the officer's going to come up to? He thinks he's going to come up to the driver's side. And he's going to come directly around his door and walk straight forward. So why wouldn't you, obviously, while keeping your eyes on him, go to the back of the vehicle, go around, come up on the passenger side, and you can certainly see significantly more than you could ever see on the driver's side. And also, you have different angles of escape where you don't have angles of escape into traffic. Those can be big
point.
issues.
Yeah, very good point.
You wind up trying to bail. Obviously, you're going to probably suck to the car because of the angle, at least initially. But if you bail outward or wherever you're going to go, you might get hit by a car. I don't want to tell old war stories, but, literally, I pulled up on a vehicle years ago, and there was a guy holding a MAC-10 in the middle looking to the driver's side for me to come up. It was just pure luck that they were still both looking that way towards the driver's side. Then I had to explain to them, basically physics at this point, what was going to happen. But, so it kind of worked out well. But, for me, it was on I-95, and I didn't want to get hit by a car. And then I kind of figured it out from there, even as a pretty young guy, because, this is probably a better idea. So to me, it's just kind of not being where you're predictable to be.
Like, all right, fellas, this is how this is going to go.
Fluid dynamics. If I poke a lot of holes in
something
you.
like that. Yeah, excuse me, sir. I'd like to have your attention for a minute, and that worked out well.
Oh my! Well, as you were describing the idea of bailing into traffic, that sounds really unappealing. And so, coming up on the passenger side, a lot of times, roads are somewhat elevated from the terrain around them, and there might be a ditch or at least a downhill on the passenger side. And once you go down that slope, guardrail, whatever, you've put another dynamic in this situation, and now they absolutely have to maybe come up out of their car to get the angle.
They have to come up. They have to expose themselves. They just do. And I totally agree with where you're going with that.
Yeah.
It's a different dynamic.
Yeah. Okay. This wasn't in the show notes, for questions I wanted to ask you guys, but what's going on with the mindset of law enforcement officers approaching a vehicle, and they don't seem to have their hand anywhere near their weapon in case they might need to access it. And I've seen the videos, body cam videos, where they're approaching the car, and then suddenly the driver's side door flings open and the guy jumps out and starts shooting. Are these officers being told by their agencies, look, walking up to a car with your hand on your weapon is aggressive and we don't want to send that image to the public? Or is it just something else?
I think it's something else, and I'm not really a proponent of walking up to a car with your hand on your firearm.
Okay.
Because not every situation is a shooting situation.
Sure.
Sometimes you may need to go hands-on first. If your hands are in the correct position, you can quickly get to your firearm if that's the solution you need to do. I think more so, though, it's a mindset. They're not expecting anything. They get complacent. So when it does happen, they're already behind the power curve.
There you go. Okay.
That's just my opinion, though.
So it would behoove patrol officers to really spend time learning to quickly and efficiently produce their weapon from their holster if needed, and to do that from a variety of positions, right? So,
well, I'm sure they can do that. I'm sure that they sit and train to do that. It's the mindset issue that they don't train to do. It is, I'm going to see what happens, and then I'm going to react to that. I just want to go home. That's different as opposed to, I'm wargaming the whole time I'm going up. If this happens, I'm doing this. If this happens, I'm doing that. I'm wargaming every scenario. Whereas, as Boon said, they get complacent. They just, they walk up to the car. Well, nobody shot at me yesterday, so probably nobody's going to shoot at me today. And that's where the complacency comes from. But I also think that comes a lot from the upper administrations who they don't want complaints. Be nice, do everything you can to talk this thing down, or you're going to get fired. And so that doesn't help.
And absolutely, there's definitely the complacency, but there's also the lack of support on the training from the agencies, I think, in a big way. Cool. I deal with law enforcement every single day. I own a holster company. I sell a lot. They're my biggest customer because many carry off duty. Not as many as you'd think, but many. And, I've been back when the company was early and we used to do gun shows and sell at gun shows. I remember we were in the biggest city in New Hampshire, Manchester, doing a gun show, and an older officer strolled up to the table, and he was nice and had a South Boston accent. And I was like, what gun you guys carry? He's like, I don't know. I got number 47 out of Laka. He's like, I got to qualify with it twice a year. I was like, what caliber is it? He's like, I really don't know, guy. I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, he's like, yep, they give us 50 rounds a year. I'm like, this is
kind of not, I'm not going to name the PD because
it's not the first time I hear it. And a lot of the law enforcement guys that I know, if they're doing training, they're paying for it on their own dime.
Yeah.
So I won't name the PD, but guys just coming off the road and qualify at a range I was at. Guy comes in off the road working 2 years. He's going to shoot his quals. He pulls his gun out, click. He drops his mag. He reloads, click. He takes another mag, reloads, click. He hadn't any bullets on him for 2 years from the last time he had qualified. He never bothered to reload, which you talk about complacency. That's not press checking your weapon. That's not even knowing the difference in weight between a loaded and unloaded gun. We're checking your equipment.
Cleaning.
Very surprised that you wouldn't even have a weapons check or a weapons cleaning or a gear check somewhere along the way with your squad. It's just crazy to me. I don't even understand that mindset. It's just, but I've seen it, and that was recent. It was probably maybe a year or two ago that happened.
If I can add one more thing, Mark, I just want to apologize. I was laughing at your accent. That's pretty good.
Yeah, I was about to say we need to pause for a moment and admire that he could completely be a townie with the with that accent.
You get plenty of South Boston, you get in Southern New Hampshire.
I think another problem though is with these officers, they're being surprised. Like we already covered though, because they're complacent. They have a lack of the correct readiness or mindset. But I also think that they're not recognizing the pre-attack indicators. They're not reading the body language. And now, like Bill said, they're reacting to stimulus, but they're actually seeing these indicators. They're just not recognizing what they are. I think that's a big problem too.
Ben, correct me if I'm wrong, but I would think that is a big problem, maybe even more so with civilians. When we go back to Bill's analogy of the car idling in the Walmart parking lot, let's say that the guy is actually outside of his car and people, they notice him out of the corner of their eye. He's kind of tracking them through the lot. He's vectoring towards them. A lot of things that should jump out at a person and say, there's something wrong with this scenario. They ignore it. Or they just don't know how to spot it because they haven't been, their eyes haven't been open to what this body language and these behaviors mean, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, so we've talked about cover and concealment, and we've talked about how you could use a vehicle to your advantage. And I think, naturally we've also kind of fed into how a vehicle can be a disadvantage to you by limiting your options for movement and perhaps giving you the false impression of cover when you actually only have concealment. Bill, you alluded to that earlier. If you're up against the vehicle and somebody rises up and steps to the left or the right, they might suddenly have clear line of sight on you. Is there a good rule of thumb at all? And maybe this is a religious discussion because I've heard that this is kind of a controversial question to ask about these scenarios. But is there a rule at all about when you should just get the heck away from your vehicle in a gunfight or stick near it, or does it just really depend on the situation?
I think it does depend on the situation. You really need to read a situation and make good decisions based on what's the stimulus you're getting. But at the same time, I think that you should always have in the back of your mind that if you need to get out of the vehicle for whatever reason, the vehicle doesn't run, get away from that vehicle and start to bound back and then start to flank using other vehicles or other pieces of cover, constantly putting cover between you and that threat. I think that's a better way to look at it. I wouldn't really advocate staying at that one particular vehicle where it's the center of attention and just hoping for the best.
Okay.
I think you do need to break away from that vehicle at some point.
Let me throw a really interesting twist into this. And so this is the question that if I don't ask you this, I can just forget about going to bed tonight. My wife asked me to put forth this. What do you do, though, if something happens while your kids are in the car, especially younger kids who are strapped in the car seats and can't get themselves out of the vehicle on their own? And my wife, she followed it up with a statement. She said, I've always been told just to let them have the car if it's carjacking. She said, but that's not going to happen if my kids are in the back seat. So how does that change things as far as, especially, get away from the vehicle? But what if you can't because your kids are stuck in it?
think you need to put that in context. And in that context, as a parent, if there's an immediate threat, you eliminate that threat, whatever that threat is. Your next point of your next objective, if you will, would to be retrieve your child. You should not leave that vehicle until you have that child in hand.
Gotcha.
In good conscience, I cannot recommend to anyone just to get out of the vehicle and leave their child and hope for the best.
Gotcha.
Just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Bill, is this where you want to tell a story?
Well, I don't know that I want to tell a story, but it just happens. I mean, when you're around Batman all the time, things happen. We were driving back from Ohio recently, just a couple of days back. We pulled into a convenience store, and of course, I went inside. And, two guys pulled up, and there was a baby in the back seat, and the mother showed up, and then there was an altercation, and obviously, she had custody. And door was open in the back, and the kid was going. They were going to start driving away, and the kid was in danger. And of course, Boon had to dive into the back seat to be able to save the child, which she did. But it's an amazing thing that people are just going to drive off with the door open, and whether the kid fell out or not was really irrelevant.
Oh my.
But it was one of those things where he obviously made a call of what, he obviously could have been in danger. There's two guys in the front seat. Both were in camo, most likely had a weapon somewhere in the car. It was just south of Ohio into West Virginia. So I promise you there was a weapon somewhere. But Boon, what were you thinking when you did that? Other than, I'm going to, you peeled off your first shirt and there was an S there and you were good to go after that.
Well, I definitely wasn't thinking I was a superhero, but again, I wasn't going to allow the child to be in any danger. So going back to that priority of life, at that time, the least thing on my mind was my own safety.
Well, I'm sure you've heard it before, but it sounds like you're good people, Boon. So
I'll answer. He is. He will never.
He'd never admit to that.
Compliments. Well, he might. You just won't take any compliments whatsoever.
It depends on who you ask.
Right. Yeah, I've got friends that I've got friends that will own up to all sorts of bad things all the time. If you tell them all the bad things about them, they'll say yep. But if you start bragging on them, they get quiet. So I'm not accusing you of that, Boon, but I'm very acquainted with that mindset. That's great. So,
let me just interrupt 1 second. Yeah. So you talked a little bit about, what do you do? That they've heard to let them take the car and then pick it up later.
Yeah.
And Boon and I were talking about this earlier today, and he had said that now currently there are PDs that literally advise people to let them have the car and they'll retrieve the child later.
Oh gosh.
And no, I don't know about you, but if I were interviewing a person who I was going to use to watch my kid, a babysitter,
right, and
currently just robbed me and took my stuff and then stole my child, I'm not quite sure they're going to get the pass for the new babysitting job. So there's absolutely no possible way that's going to happen.
Right. That's a good point. Honestly, how many folks, when they're interviewing babysitters or nannies or whatever, are you taking my kid anywhere? Do you plan to for the evening? If something like this happens, what would you do? It's Absolutely. A legit question to ask them, right? Are they going to?
If you really are advocating that that's okay for them, somebody advocates for that to happen, you're telling them it's okay to take the guy who just robbed you, who just stole your stuff and kidnapped your kid to be the babysitter and hope on his goodwill that he lets them out down the road and gives them a Slurpee at 7-Eleven.
Yeah.
I just find that to be an amazing thought process. It's just my opinion. Doesn't mean I'm right.
No, well, I for what it's worth, I agree. I think Mark agrees too. He's over there nodding. Yeah.
I mean, it's one of those nasty things you need to wrap your mind about because it's totally feasible. But at the same time, I've got a 1-month-old son. I mean, a 1-year-old son and an 11-year-old daughter, and the fact that happening, that sort of a situation happening to either of them, literally across my dead body, nobody's taking my car with me.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
So Boon brought this up earlier. This was my idea. Rounds start coming in through there and you got a kid in the back.
Yeah.
Like he said, you don't want to be where bullets are most likely coming, being predictable. So why wouldn't you be in the back seat on that side where the kid's at, moving out of that position? And that's about being in shape, being able to get out of that seat, be away from where the bullets are predictably going to land, covering up your child.
Yeah.
Those things and he was explaining this to me earlier. So that made a ton of sense to me.
So Boone, in that vein, would you recommend the person that I'm the dad, I'm defending my child's in the back seat. I've stepped out of the car at the parking lot at Walmart. Suddenly somebody's there because I wasn't paying attention and missed all the signs. And now a fight is on. Should I try to move somewhat to draw fire away from the car so that my kids aren't struck while I'm getting my own weapon out? Or do you move to provide cover to your child, throw yourself in between them and the gunfire, knowing that, fire may be coming your way and therefore towards your kids?
Yeah, it's hard to say. It really depends on what's in your environment. If there's cover away from your vehicle, absolutely, use that. If you're sitting in your seat and someone's, at your driver's side window or in front of the vehicle and they're an immediate threat, then obviously you have to deal with that immediate threat first. Yeah. But once you do that, then you probably need to exit on the opposite side of where that fire came from. Retrieve your child, check your child. Hey, was your child hit with glass, a bullet, some type of fragment? Check yourself as well as you continue to put distance between that threat and you by bounding from vehicle to vehicle, cover to cover. If
Gotcha.
That makes sense.
It does make sense. It really does. Okay. Switch gears a little bit. What equipment considerations should a person have? Is there any sort of holster type or configuration that you recommend for a person that spends a lot of time in their vehicle?
Well, there's 4 of us here, so we're probably going to get 4 different answers.
Probably.
But the way I kind of think of it is lines of gear. I have first, second, and third lines of gear.
Okay.
My first line of gear is everything that I have on my body at all times. And usually, that'll be inside the waistband, holster, my SIG 320X carry, yada, yada, yada. Then it goes to second line. Second line's going to back up everything I have for my first line. And the priorities are going to be something to protect myself with, something to keep that running, i.e. extra ammunition, something to patch holes, a med kit, then some type of communication device. Everything else is gravy. So between first, second, and third, it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger to where, now I'm at my third line gear, and that might be a backpack. The backpack is going to have a bigger IFAC in it. It's going to have more ammunition. It's going to have redundant communication. It'll also have like my Veritas tactical, AR-15 with 7.5-inch barrel in there as well. So the lines of gear just build off of each other. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. Yeah. Mark, were you kind of have that look like you have a thought?
Yeah, no. I was gonna ask. It's kind of off topic from that question, but one I've had here that I'm somewhat curious about is low lights from inside a vehicle in a low light situation. So, because there's lots of glass and there's lots of potential reflection, and I know a lot of the tactics in a home, but from within side of a vehicle, for instance, if I needed to shoot across the car through a closed window on the passenger seat, vehicle's not running, so I can't drop it, but I can't illuminate either because it's obviously just going to reflect. I mean, are there different methods for low light in vehicle, or is it just like first shot, break the glass, then use your light type of thing?
Yeah, when you start playing with lights in vehicles, there are techniques to put light in a vehicle, but putting light outside of a vehicle is a little problematic, especially when you're attempting to possibly identify a threat.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking.
What about firearms themselves? Do some work better in vehicle encounters than better than others? And I guess for this, I think we can all agree that logically a carbine or something firing a 5.56 or greater rifle projectile is probably going to have a little bit more oomph. But what about handgun? Is there
Glocks? Glocks work best.
I do, Mark. We got that one in there. Finally, we got some pro Glock propaganda in there.
I gotta plug them.
Yeah. No, but from your experience, is there any particular handgun configuration that works better, or is it just handguns in general suck? Use what you've got.
Well, they're all tools, whether it's a handgun or a compact rifle. I think what's more important is the ammunition.
Okay.
You need to use bonded rounds, especially around vehicles. I would be more concerned with the type of ammunition I had than I would, the weapon system system I had, whether it was a rifle or a pistol.
Very good.
Obviously, a pistol is more maneuverable inside of a vehicle, but they're all just tools.
Yeah. Yeah. I think bonded ammunition is a very good takeaway for somebody that's thinking about that, that they might, if they spend a lot of time in a vehicle, over the road trucking, or just in general, I think bonded ammunition performs better. So, okay. Mark, you got any questions before we kind of wind down for the discussion?
Yeah. I mean, here's another one. This one's kind of like, I don't know, maybe too far out there, but it's something that I've thought about in the past. Do you change like any of the layout of your vehicle, like the position of your seat, the position of the backrest, the like height that your steering wheel is, in kind of like a prep mindset type of like, well, if my steering wheel's this slow, I'm not as easy to maneuver. I mean, do you set your vehicles up this way so that you are more apt to be able to move within quickly if some sort of a situation was to arise, or is that just overthinking everything?
That is not overthinking. I'm actually glad you brought that up, because part of our class, Bill and I were discussing this earlier, part of our class, our vehicle defense classes, we start off with vehicle setup. How do you properly set up the vehicle? And we kind of push that you should set your vehicle up for performance, not for comfort. And that goes to exactly what you're talking about, proper height for the steering wheel, how you set your mirrors up so you have 360 degrees, so there are no blind spots in your vehicle. Proper height and adjustment for your seat, et cetera, et cetera.
That's a good segue into a question I wanted to ask before we conclude this evening is, what could a student expect to experience in one of your vehicle defense classes?
In our classes, we try to keep everything extremely realistic, so they can definitely expect to learn like a combative draw stroke that will allow them to draw their weapon safely. Okay. Inside of a vehicle, a structure, or outside of the vehicle, but it's consistent regardless of what environment they're in. They'll also learn safe weapons manipulations. They'll learn safe tactics inside the vehicle, outside of the vehicle, how to manage unknown contacts, integrated combatives in the vehicle, around the vehicle. But more importantly is the ballistic lab. And this always opens a lot of eyes, because unlike Hollywood, what they've been conditioned to believe, they actually get to see what bullets really do or really don't do on the vehicle and in the windshield.
What would you say is the biggest aha moment that most of your students experience in that setting?
I think it's the ballistic lab.
Yeah.
When they see how the bullets really perform on the vehicle. That's probably it.
Gotcha. All right. Mark, I don't want to miss anything. So you got stuff. You came.
Yeah. I got like one more good one that I really wanted to get in. And
Yeah.
this is for people that maybe don't have a class, or people like, up here in rural New Hampshire, we don't have a lot of vehicle classes that we can go take. We're hard pressed to get a good pistol or carbine class. But if you're not able to get into a good class and it's like a far reach and it's long travel, so on and so forth, and you can't get your vehicle necessarily onto your local gun range, are there any good ways that you can think of that you can kind of practice some of this stuff without like freaking out your neighbors in your driveway and that sort of thing? Like any tips for maybe even like role playing your personal vehicle?
I would drive straight to the SIG Academy to let you know you're right there in New Hampshire.
Absolutely.
GPS, it'll show you right how to get there. It's no problem at all.
Yeah. It's 2 hours from me. I'm a little north of there, but that's easy for me. But I mean, I think there are people that either A, can't necessarily afford the training as much as they'd like to, and if they're going to doing a vehicle course for maybe some of their first or second or even third training, maybe it may not be realistic yet. But yeah, I didn't know if there was any thoughts that you could think, for role playing, that sort of thing.
I think if you have the ability to where you can train in your vehicle, even if it's dry or you don't even have a gun in your hand, you can like air sim a lot of it and just go through the procedures. If you don't have that ability to where you're worried about what your neighbors think or freaking your neighbors out, you can start to do things the same way every time. Like the way that you take your seatbelt off should be the same way you would take your seatbelt off attempting to draw your weapon safely. And you should do that consistently. Same thing with getting out of the vehicle. When you pop the door, the same way you would if you had to engage a threat. Look around the vehicle, just imagine in your mind, hey, I defeated my seatbelt, I popped the door, I engaged the threat. Now, take a look behind you. Too often we get tunnel vision, we focus on that threat. So if you kind of get in and out of your vehicle and take your seatbelt off the same way every time, now you're building that new neural pathway. You're building that habitual association to where when you do add the firearm, it's nothing new. Does that make sense?
It does.
Absolutely.
I would think that if you're wargaming it, so to speak, regularly as part of your daily habit, you might surprise yourself. You may actually avert a crisis by being more aware and introducing some of these things, like looking around you, using your mirrors, paying attention. You might actually spot somebody that was trying to angle in on you, and just the wargaming exercise may save you.
Sure.
You made a perfect example is, you're looking around, you're looking for people and so forth and so on. So let's say that you do show up for a gunfight and there's people not attached to their cars or walking around. Instead of just driving to the convenience store, you go in anyhow. Okay, got it. I wouldn't do it, but that's another situation. But when you make eye contact, what have you done? You've taken away their element of surprise.
Yeah.
The more you do that, you have taken away that element each single time. So, look around, look at people, see what they're doing. Most likely, some of them are going to be looking back at you. Sometimes it means nothing, but the ones where it might have been a very limited chance, you've taken away that element of surprise. You've let them know.
Yeah, if they were looking for an easy, unaware target, you've just taken that. So
absolutely. So if you looked at them, what are they going to do? Most likely they're looking back, and 99% of the time, it's not going to mean a thing.
Right.
But for the 1% that it might happen, what am I going to do if I've been seen? I'm going to go to an easier target. I'm going to go to a soft target as one that's been looking around and isn't aware.
Yeah. I would think, and I base this on having listened to several of Varg Freeborn's speeches. I don't know if you guys are familiar with him or not, but and also reading his book. He makes a statement in there that I did agree with, which was there's a difference in staring somebody down and looking at them aggressively, mean mugging them, or just making eye contact in an unthreatening way that lets them know you see them, and the reaction that you evoke can be considerably different depending on which of those you do, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so a predator,
it's like a different verbal escalation, essentially. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it is. It's kind of a nonverbal.
Turn, look, and then you can give this is on time.
Right. Yeah, a predator looking for a fight. If you lock eyes and you make the same, the look back, you may have just turned it on at that point. So
I tell people that when you look at somebody, then just nod quickly and move on.
Yeah, cordial.
Acknowledge I've seen you. You're good. And if it's a predator, it's a predator. You struggle. But if it's somebody who's a borderline predator and you not acknowledge the fact that you've seen them, it could just stop the whole thing from ever happening.
Very good point. Very good
Again,
point.
we're talking probabilities. So go ahead.
Absolutely agree with everything that's been said. Just to kind of beat that dead horse a little bit, just like Bart's talking about, usually in the hood, we usually say, if you stare, you're challenging. If you look down, you're a victim. If you make eye contact and look away, you're recognizing, just saying hello. Now, he knows you're you're not scared, but you're not challenging him, and you're not a victim as well.
Right. Yeah, I think I've heard it in conversations, casual conversations among other gun owners, and everybody's got a big bad plan until reality hits them in the mouth, right? But
they were saying,
right? But you hear that. Well, I'm not going to be a victim. I give them the look, and it's like, well, are you inviting something when you do that? So, a good admonition to tone it down a little bit. And like you said, it's a look, it's a glance, maybe a cordial nod, and then you look away, and it's not threatening. It's not antagonizing.
Right.
Yeah. All right.
If I could just throw something in there on the question Mark was talking about earlier, it just occurred to me that Mark, you said you're what, 6'2", 6'4"?
I'm 6'6", 260.
6'6". All right, you're a big guy.
He's a Yeti.
You don't drive a Fiat.
No, I don't.
He has a smart car.
Well, something else that just occurred to me that someone can do if they don't have the ability to go to a defensive firearms vehicle class, especially for a big guy like yourself, is to realize where your cover is on your vehicle and get in those positions. You being a big guy, you might find, you might have a hard time finding real cover on your vehicle, depending on what your vehicle is.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you could do that without causing alarm, just by kneeling down by your tires. You don't know if you're checking the air pressure or, if you're simulating cover. So it's something else to take into consideration.
Yeah, one thing about being a big dude is that I found that the rock crawling inside the vehicle I was very successful at, because I'm able to reach across with my legs and just pin people so easily, because I can stretch completely across the door and still have plenty of power and length to achieve it. It was kind of nice, actually. If the cars were much bigger, I wouldn't have much luck there, but seemed to work out good.
Absolutely.
Mark, you have a bench going across the front of your truck or car or whatever you drive.
Yeah. I'm sorry, what was the question?
Do you have a bench or do you have bucket seats in your car?
Yeah, I have an F-150 with buckets and a center console. So
you got buckets. So for a larger guy, it's easy to be able to, prop your feet up against the base and then, reach into the back seat and be able to engage targets through that space.
Yep. And reclining and going into the next window. Yeah.
People wouldn't think to do that. They'd want to get outside of the car when you could literally still use some of that cover by being a big guy and be able to get between that space and engage into the back window.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense.
Absolutely. Yep. No, I know exactly what you're saying.
Mark, if Mark's ever angry at me, I'm just going to trip him. Run. So. All right, gentlemen. So last question for you guys, and then I want you to talk about yourselves a little bit. So it's been a really excellent conversation, and definitely we appreciate your time with us. Boon, I think our listeners would probably riot if we didn't ask at least one more question about your experience in Benghazi. So most of the things a person could possibly ask about that have probably been beaten to the dust by everybody else. But here's what I'm wondering. If you could point to one thing that made the biggest positive difference in your fight over there, what would it be? Would it be mindset, marksmanship training, something else entirely? Is there something that you could dispense from that terrible situation that would maybe make a listener in the United States safer tomorrow?
That's a difficult question to answer. It comes down to being with the right guys at the right time. If it's an individual question, it's definitely having the correct mindset, but it's more than just mindset. It goes back to, again, having the individual training to a certain level, and having the understanding of team tactics, and then understanding commander's intent, and then understanding small unit leadership. So I really can't say one thing. I can say, though, having all those, if I didn't have the proper mindset, mental readiness, then all those other things wouldn't have helped me. So to pick one, I'd have to say mental readiness and mindset.
That's powerful. And that's a common theme, it seems like, between our guests. So glad to hear you say that. I think that anything that you can do to deposit training into your bank account is a good thing, but without the mindset to actually exercise it when when all the chips are down, what was it for? What did you gain? So
sure.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you for that. Gentlemen, let's talk a little bit about you then.
More quick ones.
What? Mark, what?
Yep.
Okay, man.
It's two for each, but they're real quick.
All right, go ahead.
All right, Bill, what is your EDC?
Yeah, I forgot that one.
Okay, well, I'm going to get a bunch of grief for this, but
1911.
My good answer should be a 65, but realistically, it's an STI DVCC.
Wow, that is a first.
There you go. So I knew it was coming, but it's it makes an average shooter a good shooter. I mean,
Boon, there's still a chance here. You can save me, man. You can be the first guy. No. I mean, that may just be one of, right? So I'm holding out hope that he's a Smith & Wesson M&P guy.
No, I'm trying to be special, so that's why I said it. So go ahead.
Well, I have to go back and say that I've carried the Smith & Wesson M&P, and I love that pistol.
There you go.
I'll carried the Glock, 17, 19, 22, 23, and I love those pistols as well. I really love the STIs, and I'm trying to get Bill's STI from him. But at the end of the day, I carry the SIG 320X carry. That's my EDC right now.
Nice.
You just made Corey's day. My production lead at the shop at Squared Away Customs is a huge 320 fan, and I bust his stones about it every single day.
Oh my God, you're not going to hear the end of this. Really, you're not, Mark. So
nope, I'm not.
Yeah, all your arguments are now invalid. He'll throw the Boon trump card down, and it's over with. So.
Yeah, he's going to do it every day.
Be like how he greets you coming into the shop. Hey, Mark, what does Boon carry? Right, and it's going to
good enough for Boon.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay, and last question, then we can get you guys wrapped up here. We'll start with you, Boon. Book recommendation.
Oh, hey, good one.
Book recommendation. Right now, I would say probably Beirut Rules.
Beirut Rules. Have to look that one up. We'll add it to the show notes. I'm not familiar with it.
And Bill?
Beirut Rules is about a case officer who was murdered in Beirut, and it's a true story.
Jotted that down. I'll add that to my list. Bill, what about it?
I'm a pretty analytical guy. I need to understand things scientifically and why they work. So science of fear for me is really anything Gavin DeBecker for me is fabulous. Being able to understand all that really, I think helps that mindset out substantially.
That's awesome. Mark, what are you reading right now?
I am reading a book called Warrior Soul. And I've talked about this one before, and I read it quite frequently. And it's it's funny you said Beirut Rules, because this book has a fair amount of time with a Navy SEAL unit in Beirut during the Marine Corps barracks bombing. And it's by Chuck Farr, who was a SEAL team officer back in the 70s, 80s era.
Well, I'm going to have to throw one more in, because if I don't, I'm going to get throat punched. So this is going to be a shameless plug, but The Ranger Way by this guy named Chris Peranto.
Oh, yeah. I hear that you guys know each other.
Well, Boone knows well.
Right. Yeah.
They're pretty tight. Yeah. They spent some time together. I've heard about 13 hours.
I've heard about that. That's a
what?
Oh my!
I know, poor Boone. I wish you witnessed.
Yeah. I'm glad you did it, not one of us, right? Because I'd like to have you guys back, and if I'd done that, probably wouldn't have happened.
Right.
I'm reading You're Good Enough, Smart Enough, and Doggone It, People. No, I'm reading Never Split the Difference. Negotiating as if your life depended on it. And it's by a gentleman named Chris Voss, who was a former FBI hostage negotiator. And really the reason I'm reading this is just because I'm really sick and tired of my wife getting the better deals when we go buy a car. She's brutal. She's brutal as a negotiator, and I'm really not. So anyway, but no, it's fascinating. It's a pretty neat take on the psychology of negotiations. So trying to round off myself where it's not all just a hammer, nail, gun type solution. But
there's a guy named Trump that wrote a book like that, The Art of the Deal.
The Art of the Deal. That's right.
I don't know if you've ever heard of it. You could probably do that.
Yeah. I'm waiting for his next book on chess. I'm looking forward to that one. So, oh my, we did good, guys. We got an hour and 16 minutes into this before we really started talking about politics, and I think that's an accomplishment. No, that's fine. So, how do people connect with you guys after the show? Have you got any classes coming up soon? And in the introduction, we definitely will mention your organization, Bill and Boon, the shootingclasses.com. But how do folks connect with you? How can they avail themselves of classes? What does that look like to somebody that wants to come learn from you guys?
Well, for me personally, everything is posted on shootingclasses.com under Threat Management Solutions.
Okay.
So if they go to shootingclasses.com, they can find any upcoming courses that I offer.
Awesome. And Bill, how about you?
Well, I'm a hanger-on. So, kind of like one of those little fish that hold on to the big fish and make, sharks. So, I'm kind of like a hanger-on to Boone and another guy named Israel Matos through Defense Marketing Instructors Group. So, I'll be there. basically making sure they don't sweat. And I've got a towel for them. I'm generally in one of those areas.
Do you guys, if somebody wanted to host a class with you and bring you to their area, if it's not already on a calendar or something like that, is that possible?
That's absolutely possible. Yes, not only for me with Threat Management Solutions, but also with DMIG as well.
Awesome.
And it's something else that I don't think a lot of people realize, that during DMIG classes, I am not the lead, but I am usually present for most of those classes, helping out Izzy Matos.
Okay. Well, there you go, Mark. That's how you get good quality instruction in New Hampshire, is bring these guys on up.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the other thing. I'm the vice president of the local gun range here. So that would be something like that would be awesome.
Yeah, that would be great. All right. Well, guys, we will definitely put all that in the show notes and have people head over to the shootingclasses.com website and check that out and see how they can connect with you for classes and host you if they would like to do that. Just off the cuff, is there any certain class size that makes sense if somebody does want to try to host you? What should they be thinking about in terms of how many people do they need to get together to make that viable?
Class size really depends on the subject being taught.
Okay.
We will restrict some classes depending on what's required to 12. Other classes will have as many as 20. We've done as many as 30. That requires us to bring in 3-4 other instructors. So it really depends on the subject.
Okay.
If it's just static marksmanship validation, weapons manipulations, pistol carbine stuff,
yeah,
we can do 20, 30, no problem, if the range permits. Start talking about CQB, vehicle tactics. Now we really have to limit the size of the class. 1, for quality of instruction, but 2, also for safety.
Absolutely understandable. Fantastic. Well, gentlemen, thank you for your time this evening. It's been an absolute pleasure. Again, Mark and I have been looking forward to this from the very first time that Bill reached out to me to see if we could do this. And Bill, I hope I didn't sound like too eager of a date, but man, when you suggested it, I was like,
I thought you were great.
Yeah, let me think about this for a half a second. And well, it's wonderful. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you. I hope to at least some point in the future meet up with you guys in person and shake your hands. Mark, you got anything you want to say before I completely fangirl and embarrass myself?
No, I mean, absolutely. I'm on the same page, David. It was great to chat with you both, and I appreciate both your services and doing what you guys have done for us and being on the show with us. It's super. Definitely appreciate it. Love to have you on.
You need to get a room like you're in. If I get a room like you're in, then I'm gonna be cool.
Mark is Mark. I mean, this is not going to sound good. I was going to say you're the king of false advertising, but being that you have a business, it's probably a bad plug for you. But yeah, you're green screen.
I'll be honest with you. I'm completely jealous. My bedroom should be like that.
Different room.
Okay, got it.
Oh my gosh.
Hey, Mark, real quick. What was your? I like that. What was your holster company again?
Squared Away Customs.
Squared Away Customs. All right, need to look that up.
That's a plug for Mark right there, and it's like we don't plug you enough on this show, Mark.
Right.
So, Mark,
if you get us the information, with something about your holsters and all that, we'll put it up on Shooting Class.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah, vice versa. Send me your info too, and I have, I even got banner ad space, all that kind of stuff. I can.
Yeah, we'd love to. Sure.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Stuff's not crap.
That's right.
No.
Yeah.
I don't make it as much as I used to. So
I'm just saying.
Right. Yeah. Corey keeps Mark out of the production room. Therefore, it's quality stuff.
Okay.
Mark, how do people connect with you after the show?
You can reach me at Shooters Nation. Mark at shootersnation.com is my email address for the show. Of course, if you ever need any plastic, any kydex, any of that kind of stuff, you can go to squaredawaycustoms.com. I've also launched a full line on the website if you're into the polymer 80 thing. So before I used to just have the frames.
Yeah.
Now I have the frames, the barrels, the slides, the sights, the triggers, the parts kits, everything. So it's a full line shop, even optics from Trijicon, RMRs, sight systems, all that kind of stuff.
It's like Build-A-Bear for gun guys. I like it.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
So I've been adding a lot of stuff to the website, been doing a lot of work there lately. Yep.
Awesome. All right.
Great.
Well, everybody, thank you again. Gentlemen, thank you for being here. You're welcome back anytime that you want to subject yourselves to it. I hope that you enjoyed it as much as we did.
I love it.
Absolutely did. Absolutely.
All right, everyone. That concludes our conversation with Boon Benton and Bill Orndorf. Remember to head over to shootingclasses.com to connect with these guys and learn more about the training opportunities that they have scheduled. Also, be sure to follow them on social media. You can find them at facebook.com/shootingclasses and on Instagram as @shootingclasses_com. Mark and I hope that you've enjoyed the show, and we will talk to you again next time. But until then, be safe out there.
The preceding segment was a production of the Shooters Nation podcast. Visit us online at shootersnation.com.